Hello everybody, and welcome to Theology 101. Welcome to our Friday series where we are going over pictures of faith from Hebrews chapter 11. Today we will look at the story of Samson. Of all the people listed in Hebrews chapter 11, I don't think any of them compares to Samson. If you heard the story of Samson, you would almost think that this is a typo. Abraham, I get it because he was willing to sacrifice Isaac. Moses, I get it because he did bring God's law. But Samson, I don't get it. His whole life was marked by sin. And if you are thinking this, you will be correct. If you look back at the book of Judges, it is set up with the first judge being the most moral person, and with each subsequent judge becoming more corrupt. And can you guess who the last judge is in the book of Judges? That's right, Samson. Samson lived during a time when Israel was oppressed by the Philistines. An angel appeared to Samson's parents and says that Samson's mother, who was barren at the time, would have a special son. He will become a Nazarite. The word Nazarite means to be separate or to make holy. And so a Nazarite could not do three things to symbolize his holiness. He could not drink alcohol, cut his hair, or touch a dead body. But the irony is that the holy judge becomes the most unholy judge. Let's see how this happens. Samson is a young man and he insists that he marry a Philistine woman. Here's a problem with that request. God forbid Israel to intermarry with people from unbelieving nations, because when you join lives with an unbeliever, you will become corrupted by their idols. His parents tried to dissuade him, but Samson ignored their advice. Samson walks towards Timnah to marry this Philistine woman and encounters a young lion. This lion attacks him, but the Spirit of God empowers Samson and he tore this lion apart. So we see that Samson is gifted with supernatural strength by God. When Samson returns to marry this Philistine girl, he sees the carcass of this lion and noticed that it was filled with honey. Remember what Samson was supposed to avoid? A dead body. However, Samson touches this dead lion's body and eats honey from it. And Samson knew he shouldn't have done this because he hides what happened to his parents later on. So Samson is not ignorant, but is consciously rebelling against God's commandments. Now, after the engagement period ends, Samson traveled back to his fiance's hometown for their wedding feast. The wedding feast would have been a 7-day binge drinking party. Remember what Samson was supposed to avoid? Alcohol. Now, it doesn't say that Samson drank, but I'm pretty sure that he was drunk because look at what he does. 30 Philistine men join Samson as his groomsmen, and Samson wants to embarrass them. He makes a bet wagering 30 linen garments on whether they could solve his riddle. Out of the eater came something to eat. Out of the strong came something sweet. For 3 days, the groomsmen couldn't figure out the riddle, so they threatened Samson's bride, saying that they will burn her father's house and her family if she doesn't give them the answer to this riddle. She cries and begs Samson to tell her the answer to this riddle, and when she gets it, she relays this answer to these men. Samson is furious because he was betrayed by his bride and ends up leaving the wedding. He is gone for months because he ends up walking 23 miles to another town to kill 30 Philistine men so that he can take their linen clothes back and bring it back as payment for his bet. Since Samson has been gone for months by this point, Samson's father-in-law assumed he deserted his bride and ends up giving her to Samson's best man. After finding out his bride is with another man, Samson gets angry and takes it out on the Philistines again. This time, he captures 300 foxes, which are more like jackals. They were a cross between a wolf and a coyote and had long tails. Samson pairs them up and ties their tails together and then set their tails on fire. As they are burning alive, the jackals run frantically in a zigzag motion through the Philistines' fields, destroying everything. When the Philistines find out what happened, they blame Samson's father-in-law, so they burn him and Samson's bride. Now at this point, you will hope that Samson would change his ways, but we see that the violence only gets worse. Samson attacks the Philistines who killed his bride, and in response, the Philistines gather an army of 3,000 men to arrest Samson. Just when the Philistines thought they finally caught Samson, the Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson, and like a superhero, he picks up a nearby 9-inch donkey jawbone and kills 1,000 of them. I'm sure it's tiring to kill 1,000 men, which explains why Samson is exhausted and dehydrated. He prays to God to save his life, and this is the first time in the story where we see any inkling of faith in Samson. Now let's fast forward 20 years. Samson has just gotten worse. He is now sleeping with prostitutes, but eventually sets his eyes on a specific Philistine woman named Delilah. The Philistines bribe her to find out the secret to his supernatural strength, which tells us that Samson probably didn't look like a bodybuilder. Why? People wanted to know the secret to his strength, which assumes he looked like an average person. I mean, if he was super buff, then his strength would not be a secret, right? So to find out Samson's secret, they offered Delilah 5,500 shekels of silver, which was 550 years of an average person's salary. In today's terms, this would have been $27 million. With this much money at stake, Delilah happily seduces Samson. She nags him over and over again about the secret to his strength, and finally, Samson tells her that if his head is shaved, then God's spirit will no longer be upon him. The Philistines arrive after his head was shaved, and Samson's supernatural strength disappeared because God left him. Blinded by his pride, Samson didn't realize that without God's presence in his life, he is a nobody. The Philistine gouged out Samson's eyes and tied him to a grain grinder like an animal. In celebration of this great victory, the Philistines gave credit to their god named Dagon, and while they celebrated, they wanted to bring Samson out to humiliate him. Then, we see Samson pray to God, "O Lord God, please remember me, and please strengthen me only this once. O God, that I may be avenged on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Notice that Samson didn't pray that God will restore his glory. He didn't pray for forgiveness of his sins. He prays for vengeance. Yet, out of his mercy, God answers Samson and gives him strength one last time. With one hand on each temple column, Samson pushed, and the temple crumbled and killed all 3,000 Philistines, more than Samson had killed in his entire life. So we see that Samson's faith was very flawed. He married a Philistine woman and ignored his parents' advice. He touched a dead animal's body, got drunk at his wedding, kills 30 innocent men to fulfill a bet, then later kills 1,000 men with the jawbone of a donkey, sleeps with prostitutes, sleeps with Delilah, another Philistine woman, and with this final breath, he prays for vengeance against his enemies. Yet, Samson is listed in Hebrews chapter 11. Why? Samson's name is listed not as a person to follow, but as an example of how God's power can use anybody, including those who are weak, like Samson. Imagine if you saw a super fit man run a marathon, and then he says to you that you can run a marathon as well. You would think, yeah, right. But imagine you saw a 400-pound man finish a marathon. Now you would think, if he could do it, I could do it. Samson is that 400-pound man who ran the marathon of faith. And if he can do it, well, then you can do it as well. If you want to study more about Hebrews chapter 11, I'll leave a link to a recommended resource in the description box below. If you missed the last video about Barak's faith, I'll leave a link here for you to watch. Until next time, see you.